Good morning, members. Now, 10 a.m. So I'm going to crack on because we've got a lot to do.
The three in reception.
And the three in reception join when they can. Right, apologies for absence. I've got Lee Baker, Theo Buckford, Mike Ellicott, Dominic Elston, Marcus Travis, Mark Business, Nick Thwaite, Susan Warren. And I'm going to leave it like that until we find out anybody else. All right? Declarations of interest, Robin?
No.
Jeremy? Mike?
No.
Andrew?
No, sorry.
Fine, thank you. Chairperson's announcements. I'm very pleased to welcome Claire. Claire Callister is our new Member Services Officer. Hello, and we hope you'll be very happy with us. And thank you to Carol for all the work stepping in that you did when you needed to. Thank you. Happy with the work you've been, Carol. Carol takes another this month, aren't you?
Yeah, and end of July.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So the minutes of the last meeting, I need to approve as the correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of June 2025. Because I have a proposal to seconder. All those in favour? And we'll go through them as usual, if you may. Page 1. Page 2.
It's a matter of item that.
Page 1 or 2?
Page 2.
Yeah.
Under the active travel plan, there was a mention there that parish councils might cut their hedges back and pay extra money for that. I just confirmed 2 have already done that, Wootton Courtney and Selwood. So we have done that. So, and the second point is talk about the need to collect evidence to decide whether speed restrictions are correct. I've discussed with the Mind Cycle Club chairman, and he's happy to be involved in that, and I'm happy to be involved in that in terms of doing a survey. Also, I may give the wrong impression, Mind Cycle Club isn't just about lead cyclists. They have 6 to 16-year-olds and they teach people to cycle. So it is a broad range, as the members say. So, yeah, so the evidence collecting that they have to be involved in. Okay.
Thank you. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Thanks, members. Right, going back to the agenda then, business virtually I have none, public speaking nobody's turned up, and corporate plan, over to you then.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. I'm presenting this on behalf of Sarah, who's down in Dartmoor National Park today. So the purpose of this report, and I'm going to take it that you've all had an opportunity to read this report, is to inform you of the progress we've made in delivering our corporate plan for 24-25. You're aware that our corporate plan aligns with the National Park Partnership Plan, which we're going to see a bit later for the coming years, 5-year period later this morning. It's based on the Environment Act 21, Environmental Improvement Plan 23, and it sits in the middle of our 3-year corporate strategy. And just to remind members of our 6 priorities for that strategy, which are a clear response to nature and climate crisis, a welcoming place for all, improving people's health and well-being, a careful landscape and heritage, a place for flourishing, vibrant communities and businesses, a highly performing estate delivering national park purposes, and a great organisation to work for. So those are our 6 corporate priorities which this plan is based on. It's a fairly lengthy report and full dependency, so I just wanted to bring out some of the performance highlights, so to speak, in this report. So for climate and nature, we've had our emissions halved since 2019, although we have actually seen a slight uptick in that in the most recent year. We've expanded our electric vehicle fleet. We've planted woodlands. We've had the successful award of the development phase of the landscape recovery scheme and the initiation of that. And we've had an incredibly successful FIFL programme for the year with an increased grant compared to the prior year. On the heritage side of the fence, we have the Exmoor Pioneers Heritage Lottery funded project awarded, development progressed, and that scheme is really ramping up this year. We've also had the historic building restoration grant element of FIPL that's been delivered, and that's nearly £500,000 worth of improvements to historic buildings across the area. In terms of our community engagement, we've had 28 Welcome to Exmoor Days delivered. We've had an enhancement of the Young Rangers scheme. We've benefited from Generation Green grants from our King Queen education activities. We've relocated our Dolverton National Park Centre down to reception here. This is going fantastically. And we've also revamped our website. Moving over to access infrastructure. The Great Bradley Bridge was successfully completed. That's been a tremendous occasion for that. 89% of our rights of way open and easy to use. And whilst we appreciate that slight decrease in the prior year, we've had the response to Storm Darragh to deal with in that process, with an incredible amount of resources expended on kind of recovering from that lifetime event. For planning development, our planning service has exceeded national targets in its responses. The biodiversity net gain has been successfully implemented across the park. And for all the enterprise and operations, our retail spend has been resilient despite a visitor drop. Our online shop sales are up by 42%. And during the year, we've completely reviewed and regenerated our risk management process. But that's not been without its challenges. You're all fully aware of our budget constraints, and that has led to some delays and some underperformance in 7 targets, which are detailed in the body of the report. I won't go into detail at this time. I have to say that staff capacity has been impacted and has impacted delivery in certain areas. And that's partly from the impact of the staff business review and partly from other areas. And I really would like to point you to the 5 appendices which give a more in-depth view of our performance, our corporate performance across this year. So Appendix 1, that's the detailed delivery of the 60+ corporate plan actions, and only 7 of those are in orange or red status, so it's an overwhelmingly positive result for us despite all our challenges this year. In Appendix 2, we've got Climate Action Plan progress, our emissions, renewable energy, carbon sequestration. And again, despite a slight downtick on those, that coming back in has been incredibly rewarding to see the progress we're making in each of these areas. Appendix 3 is on the employee profile, demographics, our pay gap, our turnover, and our sickness absence. So useful records there. Appendix 4, very front-facing section, is our customer feedback. So during the year, we've had 56 compliments, 5 complaints. We dealt with 36 FYR, FOI, freedom of information, and environmental impact response requests. And then Appendix 5 is a view of our key corporate indicators, our visitor stats, our plan performance, fiscal funding and rights of way. So just a view of our core kind of performance areas. And what I'll do is I'll leave that there. I think it's an incredibly impressive array of performance in light of the constraints and the situation we're facing. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Members, I'm sure there's plenty of things we want to say here. John?
Yes, it's very impressive, all the stuff that actually has been done, despite all the challenges that had to be overcome. And I see that might have been reflected in quite a big uptick in sickness absence for the long-term sickness. I mean, now we're like a quarter of the way through the year following that. Has that uptick continued or levelled off or gone down? Or, I mean, because I can see that when people have to, juggle too many balls, it's going to take it out of them, and then that's going to express itself in terms of outcomes.
Yeah, Ellie. It's quite interesting to know just the irony that we talk about sickness absence and you're hobbling across.
I know.
Sorry, I shouldn't have said that in public.
So in terms of sickness absence, we've had a bit of a funny year in that we've had quite a few staff who almost hit the long-term sick mark, but haven't. So it sort of does look higher, but there's nothing in there that's concerning. We've had quite a lot of surgery and stuff. So although they haven't quite gone over the 20 days, they've still been off for quite some time. So I think that is probably the issue there. In terms of any concerns around that, I don't have any concerns. I think, you know, we regularly monitor the sickness forms that come in and make sure that we raise any issues or have a discussion with the employee at that point. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you. John, do you want to come back at all?
No, that's fine.
And you're still the staff wellbeing surveys and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, so we've got a survey due this month, which will feed into our new appraisal framework when we have LC and DT together in September.
Okay, well that's reassuring. Mike?
Yes, you probably expected this question. It's in terms of Appendix 1. There's no progress to report in terms of Action 19B, page 4. I just wonder how important that particular action is in the context of other priorities. There's been no progress to report. Is it something that we should still be considering? How important is it given other priorities?
Claire, can you take that one?
I'm just finding it.
Page 4.
Sorry,
page 4.
bear with me. 19. The woodland carbon.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's something that the woodland team would like to do, but you're right. It's not sort of gone up there in terms of the priority. So it's there as something to pick up as and when we feel that we can. We're obviously doing a lot around new woodland planting, and where it's appropriate, we're entering that woodland into the woodland carbon code. So far we've only done that for plywood because it has to be a certain size to be able to do that. But I think the idea of the woodland carbon toolkit is to give us a bit of a better idea in terms of the overall impact of woodland operations, so you know the fuels that you're using in your management and your contractors and that sort of thing. So it just gives us a bit of a better feel for the overall impact. We've done a piece of work looking at the sort of farm estate, looking at driver to sort of do that same analysis of emissions as well as opportunities for sequestration, and it would be nice to be able to do the same for the woodland. But that's why it's in there. It's just there's obviously been a lot of other other work going on and other priorities that have taken over. So I think it's useful to have as a prompt, but it's not causing us an issue by not having done it.
Right, I can understand that. It's still of some value then, and it should be retained.
Yeah.
And it's not too ambitious, and it's likely to be done at some point.
We'd hope so. I mean, I'm probably cautious about that at the moment, just because of all of the other work that's going on around the woodlands at the moment, and the ambitions that we have for our own estates around increasing tree and woodland cover. So we'll review that. I mean, it's a good point to raise. We'll review it with the team and see whether we should keep it or not. Thank you.
Mandy?
Thanks, Chris. Congratulations. You know, there's a lot to celebrate in the report, and it's nice to take a moment to do that. Just a couple of things I'm interested in. Online shop redesign, net sales at 42%. I'd love to know what you've done to increase it like that, or was it a low bar to start? And the next question is, can that be developed more and further? So that's the first question. And the second one's around Pinkery. There seems to be a lot of, not swinging around, that's the wrong phrase to use, but there's a lot of figures going up and down on Pinkery usage-wise. So in the last few years, we've got none of the targets in. So half of it up to 21, 22 has sort of target lines in, the other half of the table doesn't, so why are those not there? But also if we look at the special bookings, those were really high at one point, now they feel very stubbornly low. If we look at the school bookings, they're actually up on previous years, and again, exclusive hire is up on previous years. So I'm just wondering if there's a plan behind what has caused these figures to change so much, and will the targets, etc., be put into that table at some point? Page 44, that table.
Do you want me to answer the online shop one?
You drop your phone before someone stands
Yeah,
up,
that's
by the
okay.
way.
Yeah, so in terms of the online shop, I think it's a combination of factors. It is a relatively low bar. We've only had it for about 3 or 4 years, and we've seen good growth in that time. We always took it on as something where it had no or very few additional costs for us. We run it within our existing staff teams. Our limits then to deal with packaging and kind of processing of orders and stuff. So yeah, we've seen it kind of ramping up. I think this year in particular we had a couple of notable things that, as well as the redesign and the refresh, we've also given it more of a focus in terms of promoting it more. Things like our Park Life newsletter we introduced last year, and we put in links to a shop within that, and that's had a good outcome. But I think also we've had a couple of new products that have helped. So we've had our parking permits for the full year for the first time. So that's obviously driven people. And what's quite good about that is once people come to the site, they often register, they get our emails, they come back, they discover that we've got other products. There was also the Exmoor Farms book just before Christmas, which proved to be a very popular book. So, I think there's been a combination of factors, but so far the signs are that, we're maintaining that trend this year. And I think partly as well, it is that ongoing trend. People are switching their spending habits, and we're just matching the trend elsewhere really, but online is still growing compared to kind of high street footfall.
Did you want to come back?
Yeah, it's key really. I think we've got a lot of really big events like Dark Skies, etc. And I think if you can start to link into products that support some of those events, I think that could be powerful. But yeah, I think a lot of potential there. And if you get the products right, we all know that if you hit something that sort of gets a lot of coverage, it can really boost sales and income. And for me, that's the add-on money that can do a lot with, and if it's within capacity, that's great. Thank you. Never always pick on.
Laura? Oh, sorry. Yeah. We've got Pinkery. Sorry, yeah. Pinkery, I forgot about Pinkery. Have class again.
So on Pinkery, the set out the core business is school groups and repeat bookings. So it tends to be the same schools rebooking. It's very much word of mouth in that sense. We're not advertising, we're not pushing for more bookings. There is definitely headroom at Pinkery. We've had a real push on exclusive hire, and that's going very well, as you said. I think there's more to do. We're looking at that. One of the complexities is around, for us right at this moment in time, is about driver as well, because driver will have accommodation, and it's the offer. In a sense, we're looking at a combined offer. So there's Pinkery doing what it currently does with some more headroom, driver having accommodation as well, and what its target audiences are. So we're actually looking at that at the moment. So I think that's probably all I can say, but we'll come back on that. But we are aware of the headroom at Pinkery.
Thank you. I think packaging is really important, and if you can sort of package an offer again, that tends to be appealing to people. And the other question was, you haven't got any of the targets in the latter years. I do not got them in the table on page 44. The first half of the table's got the targets in, the second not.
Yeah, Claire's just saying that those targets were dropped after COVID.
So you don't have any target?
No.
It's just helpful to have them because it gives a direction.
Yeah.
Laura?
Thank you. Just want to echo the comments about it being really good to see all the hard work the team has done paying off, so thank you for that. Great to see the spend up in the business spend up, the planning applications met, all of that kind of stuff. This is more of a call to action to the board around the care more, because donations were down a little bit. I put a few quid into care more every month, and if anyone else can afford to, it's a good way to just support that ongoing regular giving, but also to sort of spread the message around that, because that regular giving is really important because it carries on. It's not a one-off. So just a small call to action to sort of spread the word about that brilliant scheme and make sure next time we're reading this report, it's not down, it's up.
Thanks, Laura. Ethan?
Yeah, mine could be a call to action, or it may be actually happening already. I was looking at the age profile of employees and the fact that we have 3 more people in the age group 25 to 34, which is heartening. And there's a comment there that as the risk of losing experienced staff, we've had 30 people in the 55 to 64 bracket, so that's moving on. At the risk of losing experienced staff through age retirement increases, strategic succession planning will be an important focus for the authority. Well, I think it is a really important focus for the authority now, and it's something that maybe the chairman, in tandem with the chief executive, or advised by Ellie, we should be every year revisiting our succession plan right across the board, because we're now reliant on individuals, but we're a smaller organisation, and so it's not just something for the future. We should be succession planning from the chief executive right the way through the organisation, and it's something that maybe we should be thinking about that as a priority sooner rather than later.
I will take that on board myself, actually.
Yeah,
And
I think it's really
I'm obviously Sarah and have a conversation with that. Of course, these days there is no retirement ages. You can all just carry on if you want to, which is so depressing. As soon as you said that, I thought, oh my God. Robin, I'll try and be more cheering.
Nowadays, try and tell that from far.
There isn't any.
especially when Mark find a big tax bill there. First of all, I'd like to move the recommendation. I have got a few comments and questions. First bit really is, I think, to congratulate the staff on achievements within corporate plan report here. I think they've managed a phenomenal amount with a relatively small number of staff. And quite how they squeeze all of that in, I'm not quite sure actually sometimes. But I think they do deserve our thanks for delivering what they've got there. And I think an awful lot of other parks have been quite impressed with that corporate plan report as well. So I think we should be quite proud of our staff from that point of view, so thank you. There's a few challenges, undoubtedly. And I note rather interestingly within the stuff around the Great Bradley Bridge is fine. It's just unfortunate we've had another weather event, haven't we? That means that we're now at the other bridges, bits of access short. So challenges within that, because there's still a feeling from my point of view, it's that level of access here that is one of Exmoor's greatest attributes. And the challenge really to Dan's team, I suppose, and so on, how you manage to keep that level of access available and how we find the money to ensure the infrastructure is kept up. Secondly, just a comment around an awful lot of work gone into tree planting and obviously development of our tree nursery. Just be interested to know weather conditions like we have here, what's the survival rate of the stuff that's been planted? Is it going to be sustainable, or what sort of level? The other question on there, report around net zero. We declared climate emergency back in, was it 2020, something like that? Something like that. We seem to have got to virtually on the grass a point of levelling off. What is the chances of reaching our target by 2030? Or where do you think we might actually end up in reality? And the other bits around are the sort of the increasing challenges around, people have already asked about driver and Vinkery, but of course there's the Pioneer Scheme, the landscape recovery work and so on, and of course the pressures of what budgets we may or may not, and the challenge of, in reality, not having long-term budgets to be able to determine where we go. It's fine, the one-off payments this year, but the reality is an awful lot of that, what that can deliver this year, is actually what we need to deliver year on year. And how are we going to, where's that money going to come from? And I absolutely endorse Laura's comment around Carewall. It's done a phenomenal job, but we've actually got to make sure its profile becomes greater and to make sure people are willing to contribute. So there's one or two questions and comments within it. Thank you.
I think they're mainly you, Claire, sorry.
On the tree planting and the nursery, yeah, I mean, you're right, it's been quite a challenge, hasn't it, with the weather, but I mean, the team have been very mindful of that and have been out watering. We're getting an automatic watering system at the nursery, so that will help that a lot, and in fact, Rob and I were up at Driver last week, and I did have quite a good look at the trees that have been planted there, and they seem to be doing okay, so far so good, but it is a challenge, and it's something we're very mindful of for the future in terms of the selection of the type of trees and the resilience to longer term climate change as well. I mean, and on that, in terms of our climate declaration, I mean, I would say we're pretty good in terms of being on track. Of course, you tend to do the things that are easier first, and then it becomes more difficult as you sort of get further on. In terms of our National Park Authority carbon footprint, 2/3 of the emissions are from our buildings, and we've done a lot of work to, particularly in terms of heating, to sort of green the way that we generate that energy. The main thing that we find difficult to really reduce demand on is in terms of our electricity use, and of course the more renewable energy we use, you're increasing your renewable energy as well. So the trajectory takes into account the greening of the grid, and we do also, when we're purchasing our electricity, look to purchase a kind of a green tariff, so that we're doing what we can there as well. So I think I think I'm sort of cautiously optimistic that we can still meet that objective. Probably the bigger issue for us really is the fact that at the moment we're measuring certain things. We haven't been measuring our complete carbon footprint. We've just started, as the report highlights, looking at our procurement, which absolutely dwarfs anything in terms of the other emissions that we have been monitoring. So in a way, I think that's a bigger challenge for us if we look at the wider impact of the work that we do and how we procure it. So we've had a useful piece of work done by the Carbon Trust to sort of have a look at that for us. It's a bit crude, the methodology that they use is based on spend and how you categorise that spend, so there's more work we need to do to really better understand that. The new finance system hopefully will help us with that. And then, we'll be able to sort of engage a bit with some of the big suppliers and look at, anything that they can do. So, there's a fair few challenges in there for us still, but I think, I think we are doing well, and we're doing as much as we can in terms of, reducing our own carbon footprint.
So the other question was around access and sort of reaction to extreme weather events on the infrastructure and that kind of.
I'll let Rob do that one.
I find musical chairs, isn't it?
I think our response to Storm Darragh was sort of impeccable, really.
Yeah.
We've got a little bit more capacity in the team now. We're using some of our reserves to sort of take on more contract posts, particularly to address things like pairing. So after Storm Darragh, we put virtually the whole team onto the clear up, and it took months, which meant they weren't doing anything else. So we're way behind in other areas of work, but we've used some of our reserves to actually take on extra posts to actually address that shortfall. Longer term, in terms of our funding, yes, it is the thing that keeps me awake at night. It is one of the most important aspects of the national park, is the rights of way network, and how do we plan for the future? It's very, very difficult, and I genuinely don't know what the answer is, I think, because we're very dependent on external funding. We're also dependent on the core grant that we put into it, and both of those are very uncertain. Looking ahead, we can strategise, and Dan and I talk about this a lot. We'll talk about it more in the coming months, but to have a plan for reducing spend, I mean, we have reduced our capacity, we have reduced the quality of the network. We hate doing it. We have a team that's incredibly highly motivated. They're passionate about what they do. They do an exemplary job, and it's heartbreaking for them to have to accept a lower standard. and it's a difficult message for managers, but that's the world we're in. Going forward, it's very difficult to plan for, and that's the honest truth, I think.
Thank you. Andrew?
I'm not quite sure who the question can be aimed at, but probably Dan and Elizabeth. Two areas. One is the income generation, and the other one is the balance between pursuing the emissions reduction and operational efficiency. Income generation, priority action 4 is about developing the overall income generation strategy and becoming more commercial. And I wonder if that title is correct. I wonder if it's not about income, it's obviously about profit and usable money, which leads me to the reporting on the national park centres, which is great, as Mandy said, that the profitability seems very good there. But what I think is being masked a little bit is this talk of a profit margin of 43% and 42%. So going forward, I think, to be more commercial and understand where income's coming in, that I presume is the profit margin on the materials, not the shops and the online. So to be more commercial going forward, we need to start understanding, are those shops actually making money?
No.
Is the online making money?
No.
That's what I'm worried about, the income generation strategy, because we can bring income in, but if it costs more to bring that in, it's not actually helpful. So question around that strategy going forward, I guess we'll see it, and just clarification those profit margins, first area. The second area is, as Robin said, we're flattening off on some of the emissions targets, which I think is inevitable, and other organisations have got to this point, and you see in the private sector a lot of organisations changing their targets, because they realise the cost to get to the final bit is going to be so much. And an example is, I see that mileage has gone up for the staff because they've been doing more projects. Now, it'd be crazy if the staff had said, no, don't go in your car because we're going to increase our carbon footprint, when you want to be operationally efficient. So I just wonder if we start to reach that point where we need to be honest and say, actually, no, we need the staff out in the cars, it's going to increase mileage, but that's the right thing for operational efficiency. And are we getting to the point where investing in measures to reduce energy actually starting to be greater than the actual benefit to achieving the objectives of the national park? Because at the end of the day, we've got to achieve objectives, probably more important than the emissions. So have we reached that point where efficiency and costs are being really going to make it very hard to go any further, as Robin said? So two different areas of it.
Right.
So I'll do the emissions one first, allow Dan to so yeah, in terms of mileage, I suppose the thing that we're focusing on is the emissions from the mileage, not the mileage itself. So although and we measure different things, so we measure the mileage that the staff do in our pool cars, the ranger and the field services and facilities teams, education teams, etc. And then we measure mileage staff do in their own cars, and we also have a bit of an estimate around volunteer mileage and member mileage. So there's quite a lot to sort of unpick with all of that, and it is more complicated now because we have electric vehicles. So obviously the mileage that is done in electric vehicles, although there is still an emission from that, it's much less obviously than before when we had petrol or diesel vehicles. And we can't control obviously what staff have in terms of their own cars, but we do have now an employee scheme where there's a salary sacrifice for buying an electric vehicle if they wish to do that. So I think we're sort of doing what we can in relation to helping staff with their own mileage as well. And there is a presumption that you use a pool car first before taking your own car. So I guess we're never going to say to staff, don't do your job because you're going to create some emissions. We're obviously just wanting to try and minimise the impact of that where we can in relation to the type of vehicle that you're using and the emissions from that vehicle. Does that?
Yeah, I only raise mileage as an example. There must be other areas operationally where there's going to be this balance between chasing that target but actually realising the main priority of the national park is to meet the objectives. So I'm just wondering, is that happening more and more
To an extent, I think the one that I mentioned in terms of procurement, I think is going to be, the bigger challenge for us, because we need to procure those things. We do have, and we work with Devon County Council in terms of their procurement system, so there are sort of like there's a sustainability framework for that. So we're trying to influence the decisions that are made in terms of procurement and who the suppliers you're using, and always trying to, ensure that we're getting obviously still value for money, but also, a sustainable product or service or whatever it is. So it kind of needs to run through everything that we do. But yes, you're right. The business case is still the business case for doing whatever the operation is. We just need to look at doing that in the best way that we can, in the most sustainable way.
And then profit margins.
Yeah, thank you. So there's probably two bits to that question. One is around the income generation strategy. We'll be bringing back to you in the autumn so we can have a fuller debate in due course. But I think the intention of that is really to look at all forms of income beyond our core DEFRA funding. So it could be grant funding, it could be commercial income. It's really, and a lot of it won't be anything particularly new. A lot of it is what we're already doing, but it's bringing it together into one place so that you can see what we're doing in terms of kind of philanthropic giving around care more, grants and projects funding, looking at our more commercial income, those kind of areas. So we'll just bring it all together so you as members have got a better overview of that. In terms of a specific around profit margins, then to be absolutely clear, our centres do not make a profit. They are a public service. Their fundamental kind of aim is delivery of our second purpose. It's promoting opportunities for the public to enjoy and understand the special qualities of a park. But the retail goes a long way to offsetting those core costs. So the profit margins we talk about, you're quite right, are in terms of cost of goods sold versus what we generate on them. Having said that, obviously the business review, we did a lot of work in terms of reducing the overall cost of the service. So relocating the Dalton Centre was the main thing there. We've now got an income which we didn't allow for in the calculations. We've got a new tenant in that centre. We've lost our overheads. We've incorporated it into the existing building. So, we've radically reduced the cost there, for example. We've also reduced the staffing capacity across our 3 centres. That's not without challenge, but again, it has allowed us to operate a slightly leaner, meaner machine. So, in total, we engage about just under 200,000 visitors a year. And I think it's a pretty cost-effective service now. But as I say, the retail helps to offset those core costs. But I wouldn't want you to be under the illusion that we are, if we were doing these purely commercially, the centres would look very, very different, but they wouldn't be providing our core public service. So I think that's where we are with that one. I think that's covered.
No, good, thank you. No, I think the centres look great. I like when the Dunster one and the one downstairs is brilliant. So, thank you, Dan.
But Bill, did I see your hand?
Yeah. On priority action 3, priority action 3, Spiffle. Are we happy with the way that's working? It says here that it's supporting farmers to transition to new elms. And it seems that an awful lot of money is being spent in 1 or 2 places, not least here at the National Park, and 400,000 went on capital spend on this historic building. Was that the intention? Is it being spread widely enough through farms throughout the actual national park? That's really my question. It just seems a bit skewed to large projects, many of which seem to be ours, and capital works rather than helping farms transition. So, but I just wondered, are we happy with the way that's working?
Claire?
Thank you. So I think there's always benefit in reviewing and looking at how how it's all going, and I know that has happened with the panel just at the start of this new financial year. I'm sorry, I might look and see if I can find the figures to give you, but we did do a review in terms of that spread of spend. That was something that was raised by the Hill Farm Network, and yes, as a National Park Authority, we have received funding, but the funding that we tend to receive is to support
projects that are helping farmers more generally across the park. So, for example, Sowing the Seeds project, which is engaging with many landowners over promoting meadow restoration. The sort of the spread of the spread of money to farmers, I think, is reasonable. We did have a look at that. Obviously, it's based on applications, and we can only determine the applications that we get, and it's based on those applications, the merit of those applications, and then those meeting certain criteria. The team have been working very hard to get the messages out and going into markets and things like that, and through those meetings they have engaged with new farmers in relation to getting new applications in. So I feel that that it's doing as much as it can to get the money out broadly to the farming community and to support that. I think the question over transition is a difficult one. I mean, that's sort of what it's set up to do, but actually the nature of the funding is very, especially when we only have an annual funding allocation. It was easier when we had the 3 years to start with. Is that you are sort of funding projects that can be delivered in a year, but the range of things that that can be done and supported through that is quite broad. So again, it's really up to the applicants and the land managers and the farmers what they think is most useful for them in terms of that transition. And what was your final point? It was about the...
Well, it's just how can you make spread more widely, because it seems to me that, sorry, it just seems when you look at the figures, and I just look back over the previous years, that a few organisations and landowners are getting the majority of the money, and a lot of money is going on capital spend.
If I may, Chairman, can I come back to members with that spread, because we do have those figures, I just can't recall them at the moment.
Yeah, it does actually say here 400,000 actually went on buildings.
So the buildings was a specific heritage buildings grant. It was
right,
additional funding for that. So that's why that funding has been obviously given to those traditional buildings. But the rest of the money has gone quite broadly to a range of projects. So if I may, I will come back to you with
that would be really helpful,
and
if that could go to all members, because obviously there's quite a few members not here. That would be really helpful. Thank you. So I've got no more hands.
Sorry, can I just come back?
Oh, sorry.
Can I add to that, I think it's important, because I think it's the reputation that the party should be, it's sort of on the line here a bit. It's a lot of money, we're spending having quite a lot of it. We just want to make sure that it looks right and we're doing it correctly. That's what I'm concerned about.
Which is why it's coming back to all members, so we can have a look at that. So thank you. Evelyn, briefly, please, because we're running very behind.
Very quick point, and it was following on from what Andrew said, and it's addressed really to Dan. So we know the gross profit margin of our cost of sales, but it would be useful to understand net margins too, including the other costs, even if we were just to make a target year on year of a lower loss. And so I think that is something worth exploring, and I would kind of agree with Andrew. I accept that at the moment we're probably looking at cost per visit, and that's a good way of looking at things. If you're conducting an activity that might take time, that you could say, then it's worth looking at your net profit margin if you can. That's it.
Thanks, Evelyn. Robin, you have one more
Yes,
question?
just very briefly, just one bit that I think is good news I'd like to highlight really, and it's the bit that disappears quite quietly in here, the rural enterprise vision work and the stuff that Dan's been doing. And actually, to me, that shows what you can encourage the business community to do amongst themselves when we put some staff time and resource and some real leadership in there. And I'd like to thank Dan for that, because that's been incredibly successful in my view.
So I have a proposal, Robin proposed, I'll second it. Thank you very much, Mike. All those in favour? Thank you, it's unanimous. Right, moving on, we now have the outturn, so it's back to you, Dan.
Thank you, Chairman. So following on from the corporate plan 24-25 actions, we have the kind of financial element of that, which is kind of referred to slightly within that report. Historically, at this point, I would have brought you the outturn, the performance on our budget and our reserves. But I've also brought you the statement of accounts at the same time. Just to let you know, the statement of accounts has been completed. The statutory deadline was yesterday, 30th of June. and I submitted it and uploaded it to the website at 3 PM yesterday, so that has been completed, but unfortunately not in a position to be able to bring it to you within this paper. So that will be brought to you in probably September as a separate paper. So for this item, again, I kind of hope you've had a chance to review the report. I'm just going to fire some headline figures at you, some kind of key facts from this. So looking at our financial performance. So at the end of the year, after transfers to reserves, with a small surplus of around £5,000. That compares to a deficit last year of £94,000. Our total expenditure in 24-25 is about 7.6 million. So that's supported by 3.2 million of National Park grants, cash frozen for the 5th year. £500,000 in one-off additional DEFRA funding, National Park grants. We had 4.2 million of earned income, so that's the whole way from including FIFL, so grants, fees, interest, etc. And we also had £450,000 of capital receipt from our land sales. So what were our key budget drivers in this? So we started the year with the implementation of the business review. So that was addressing a projected budget gap and aligning with the DEFRA priorities that were at the time. We had continued high legal costs from a certain legal case, and we also had capital investments with our project driver. And we also had strong income in terms of grant schemes with the FIFL and Farm Protected Landscape scheme that we've just been discussing, and other external sources. So our landscape recovery schemes, LRS, our Exmoor Pioneers Heritage Lock River project. So you'll see from our reserves that our reserves increased by around 460,000, by a total of 3.96 million at the end of 24-25. So within this there were some sizable changes. So we had 300,000 that went to Exmoor Pioneers from Caremore in terms of legacy funding for that project, match funding for the Heritage Lock River projects. We had a large amount transmitted over to planning policy to kind of shore up our local plan process as that comes to its kind of conclusion in the next year or so. We had a lot transferred to estates for our estates project. We've got a lot of backlog maintenance on our estates. We have a sizable requirement to spend on that. And we also have the increase in the capital receipt that's gone in there to support future works. Our general fund balance is around 230k, and whilst that's below the 300,000 target, we tend to offset that by contingency reserves of 350k, so I deem that sufficient reserves to support us in terms of the ongoing position. We had a reasonable amount of capital spend, a significant amount of capital spend in the year, about £545,000 worth. So we had the Drive Respawn renovation, we had Great Bradley Bridge construction, we procured several EV vehicles, electric vehicles, also a range of vehicles and some FST plants, field service steam plants. We had a new solar scheme at the tree nursery at Exford. We replaced our water system at Pinkery to make that safe and secure. And we also had a reasonable spend on mine and cliff safety works on our assets. We've also had a capital receipt of about 450,000, which is earmarked for driver development, sorry, not farm. So that's the kind of the financial performance, our budget drivers, our reserves, our capital expenditure. The report, I appreciate the lengthy report, but it also looks at our budget monitoring. There's quite a significant variance that's shown within that appendix. Primarily that's down to the timing of grant receipts. With the single year funding this year, we've only just received our first quarter funding, so it's around about £1 million in terms of our revenue and capital allocations. So that has quite a big impact on us in terms of our cash flow, because we essentially had 2 months of employee spend alone before our first quarter grant came in. Although saying that, we're in a reasonably good position at the moment for our cash flow. We've got as you'll see from Treasury Management paper, we've got a reasonable amount that's earning a reasonable amount of interest currently. There's an appendix on DEFRA one-off grant use. We had the 250,000 revenue, 250,000 capital allocations, which actually came to us quite late in the financial year. And we allocated that, and members were aware of the allocations for that. There has been some spend, but the majority of those funds have been carried over to 25-26 to support spend on those areas in the current year, and most of that has been occurring now. And also go into detail about our medium-term financial plan update. You're aware we took an unprecedented step in bringing a revised budget to you in May rather than November, with the change in the late notice of our reduction in revenue grant. So our revenue grant was reduced by 8.2%, but we did have the 1.4 million of capital that supported that, and we are working through that. So the revised medium-term financial plan does have some budget gaps in future years. We're of course concerned by the current situation around spending review and how that might impact on us, albeit that we will have a 3-year time period on that, so we should be able to bring some stability in our planning and strategic direction on that. We continue as an authority to remain debt-free, and all our treasury and investment management activities have complied with statutory and internal policies. So again, overall, we have had a reasonably successful financial year. We are in a strong position to weather the current climate, metaphorically speaking in other words, and we are looking to the future to see what government direction is as to how we have to react to that. Thank you.
Thank you. I try not to get depressed at this point. Well done. All right, then. Members, Sandy, you're looking at me like you're going to say something.
Always. I'm obviously on the same vibe today. I don't even need to put my hand up. I'm impressed. Thanks for paper. And also thanks again to the team for adjusting the budget last minute. That included significant capital receipt, which is quite different to the authority. So referring back to the last paper, there's likely to be a change in budget management moving forward, and we've seen that more and more of our staff are working on specific project and partnership contracts. And I think when I looked at it, it's currently between a quarter and a third of all of our staff are engaged in that. So I'm just wondering moving forward how you will manage to budget for that. My second question is around table 58, which is that sort of summary document. And I note there are a number of lines which you referred to where the actual spend is much higher than the budgeted spend. And as you said, it's brought back to something near the budget by moving money to and from reserves. So for me it's quite challenging to work out whether you're on budget, over budget or under budget because of that movement, more and more movements from reserves. I understand why we need to do it, but it's really difficult to gauge whether we're actually where we planned to be, whether we've had money come in last minute or whether it's been used, and I'll call it very non-technical, as slush funds, just to balance at the end of the year with what you might have in reserves. And I'm finding it quite difficult to work out whether the budget was right at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and there are some we won't know, things like donations and legacies, I get that, but where we've got a lot of project work, I'm not sure from this whether the projects are overspent, underspent, money left after, and how planned they were at budget setting. So I'm struggling with the element of the project work with all the figures that are here. I don't know how you do that, but I think it's a different way forward, and it's how you make that clear within the papers, and I don't know the answer to that. So laying down a gauntlet then really to how you capture all that project work and how that's actually going within the budget. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for that observation, Mandy. Yeah, we have spoken before about this, how we present this. I suppose taking the first point around the percentage of staff that are on project works, obviously in May we faced that challenging situation. Having undertaken the business review in the 23-24 and implemented that on the 1st of April 2024, we felt that rather than having another period of instability, we would try and maintain business as usual for the year for the staff teams, so that would essentially give 2 years of continuity. So that's one of the first principles in this, is that we were trying to maintain morale and staff team, maintain the level of work that we've seen in the corporate plan actions. Albeit we are moving to a much more project-based system. So I think as we come into the spending review 26-27 onwards rounds, we will see a different way to budget for our staff teams. I mean, we changed the budget last year to actually bring in all the project income and external funding. That was the first of the step in this. And we've also got a new finance system now which will help us to track budgets through in a lot better way. For a system we didn't have that, which essentially was spreadsheets before in spreadsheet management. I suppose that brings me on to the second point around the disclosure of this and how we show that. I mean, we've always been a reserve-heavy organisation, and those reserves have built up for various reasons, but they've supported projects over multi-year periods, not necessarily capital nature. And the additional spend we often see in the budget monitoring is due to these projects being spent and utilised. But I appreciate there's not an easy way to use a metric to show that in the papers, so I will take that as a challenge. And now the final accounts are out of the way, have some space to be able to try and work that through. But our new finance system will enable us to do that. We're doing that with the capital programs that we've got, managing those projects on the new finance system, so we should be able to do that with projects in the same way and actually assign budgets to them, so that we can give you a lot more information and a visibility of what actually is happening with those. But I do appreciate it's an old way of looking at it in these current appendices.
Thank you. I don't mean hard on myself. I think it's the changing nature of the way we are funded, but it's just that assurance, I suppose, for us that those projects are coming within the budget. And there might be some that's left over than a reserve that then needs sort of reviewing and sort of putting elsewhere. So I just think it's a changing time of the way we are funded.
Just to add that last point, we meet quarterly with our delivery team and leadership team members, both on the actual performance, but also on the level of reserves that support those budgets, so they're kind of hand in hand. So they are, from a management point of view, they are looked at together, but appreciate they don't flow out to yourselves in that way.
Mike?
Just on that point, I think there was recommendation that we have quarterly monitoring reports, so presumably we picked up at that point anything of particular concern.
That's all I've been report actually. Thank you. Any more questions? Robin?
Yeah, I'd like to move the recommendations. Just one comment that actually Ben within that. As I look at the one-off grant funding and the revenue items that we funded, quite a comprehensive list, all of which contribute very definitely, I think, to our purposes. But just an element of frustration that we end up spending 50,000 of that to support our planning team, because Natural England will not fund this. They are the statutory organisation that provided advice on the air quality, and yet they won't fund the study. You do tend to ask. My feeling is, to some extent, undoubtedly this is above and beyond what we would expect, but and hopefully this will contribute towards faster dealing with some planning applications that are quite complex around this area.
Claire, we don't want to come back there.
Could I, just for information, we did actually receive a grant of £40,000 from Natural England towards the study itself. That obviously is different to the ongoing costs in terms of having to the planning team having to respond to applications. And we have been working very closely with the Natural England advisors on resolving the issue. So we've got to the stage now where we have a draft strategy, and that's what we need really to then be able to progress some of the planning applications there a little bit. So progress is being made, and there's still more work to be done on it all, but just to acknowledge that Natural England have actually provided for the funding. Thank you.
That's good news. I've got to propose, Bill, did you want to second that? Or did you want to ask?
Sorry, I was just going to ask a question. About the bird survey, there's 15,000 here which is going to be funded from the landscape recovery income, but there was also a FIPL claim for 22,000 towards the third survey. I wonder what the total cost was, if that's all the costs or were there more costs involved in that. I just wonder whether 22k is in the budget.
Do you want me to respond to that? I can respond to that if you like. The totals, I can't remember the exact total survey cost, but we employed staff to do it this time, whereas in the past we paid contractors to do it. So we got funding from quite a lot of partners to pay for basically employing Joanne and the other staff members who went and did the surveys for us. So I have to come back to you with the total cost, but that money from FIPL and the landscape recovery was part of a much wider budget that other partners contributed to as well.
Thank you.
Well, Andrew, then you can.
Really picking up the point Mandy's made, and I thought I made it before now, about, and I hadn't realised how much staff now is on project-based working from quarter to the third. The reporting obviously is really going to be important going forward, but it's going to be the mindset change of project-based working. And the importance of getting the business case up at the start is going to be so important, and keep going back to that, because the danger is when you've got a lump sum of money, the danger to rush to spend that money, and that can result in two things. One is you've overestimated, or worse, underestimated. So those business cases have to be really robust up front, and I say this from my experience of project management in construction, consultancy. It is a mindset change, and I see a big difference between the private sector and public sector, and I don't expect you to go as far as the private sector would. I used to do planning based on how much money I had for the next month. Had to reconcile every week how the money was spent. That's extreme, because that's how we survive. I don't think we can go that far, but there is some different change in mindset and reporting. It's not just the reporting, it's up front, the framework in place at the start of the project so you can report against it. It's really important. And it might be happening, but it is a new skill I would have thought to develop in a very good way, and it's balance between your financial management and the operational management. So yeah, what's the money saying, and the quarter report would be great. I'm not sure what's the question there.
No, I'm not going to keep it at that.
Thank you. Do you not use volunteers for the bird survey then?
Not for the moorland breeding bird survey, because there's a very specific methodology and sort of core skills needed to do that. But we do use volunteers for other surveys, other wildlife surveys as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, I see no more hands.
Can I second Robin's motion?
Thank you. See, there's somebody else thinking what I'm thinking. Right, all those in favour? And that is unanimous. Well done, John. Item 9, Annual Treasury Management Report. Oh, this is an exciting thing.
It's just love to hear my voice again, won't you? Thank you, Chairman. This is another element of our 24-25 performance around our treasury management. Key highlights, I suppose, we've maintained our debt-free status. We haven't had to borrow PWLB. We've had a cash balance growth through the year of about 1 million. So we ended the year at 3.7 million of cash. We earned interest of £186,000, which has been incredibly helpful for supporting our project spend. That's up from £156,000 in the 23-24 year. And the average interest rate earned was an average of 5.04%. So that's slightly above the base rate of 4.9%. So we're indebted to the Somerset Council team who have supported us for a great many years on this. They have the correct status, the NFIT status. They have the range of counterparties to bank with. We would not be able to do this without their support. So it's been incredibly helpful as always. I don't think there's any much more to say about it. The report contains some useful metrics.
John?
It's a query really, longer term, because I know that we've got quite a healthy balance there that we could spend, but obviously people are stretched, so they haven't got time to go and do more things. And we've got, additionally, this current year, we've got this additional lump of capital coming, so which makes it even more so. But longer term, you said with cash, we're debt-free.
Why?
I mean, nobody else is in the world.
Well, I am.
I mean, organisations, particularly public sector ones. I mean, there's no, I mean, everybody else runs an organisation.
Indeed. Sorry, just jumping. I suppose it's still down to our risk appetite. It's always been fairly openness to that. That may need to change, and yes, we may be in a position in 4 to 5 years' time where we've actually, our reserves have depleted. And instead of having 180,000 in, we'll be back to 9 or 10,000 pounds a year. So that will impact on our kind of long-term budgetary position. But yes, for some of the larger projects, we tend to only use debt to finance the larger projects. At the moment, we've got that DEFRA support for those. So it's what happens next, really, what happens long term.
Do you think it's worth exploring in members' forum about our risk appetite?
Very much welcome that.
Excellent, well, we'll put that on the agenda then, shall we? Fran?
Thank you. You preempted me there. I was just going to say, where do we decide what our risk appetite is? Is it officers' risk appetite, obviously it's on recommendations, or is it part of ours? And so I think it would be a good idea to discuss this. I mean, I've done this previously within councils, etc. So, yeah, I think it would be a good idea to put in a...
Probably when we're all here.
Well, it doesn't, I'm just going to say this, I can't force people to turn up, as much as I'd love to have that power, but I think, it is whether obviously things happen to their life, don't they? But, the first Tuesday, if we can find somewhere where we haven't got an overheated agenda to do, and then we have a members' forum, we have a look at our risk appetite, that would be great. Mandy?
Thank you. Just as a counterbalance to that, there is that willingness, ability and capacity to go out to look for extra funding. That's the flip side of that coin, if you like. And I'd much rather be spending and investing in that doesn't put debt on the books. Every penny is paying interest. There's a penny left on services, penny left. So I think that's the counterbalance to that risk and borrowing question.
Did you want to do this question? No.
Yeah, I think Mandy's right, and we also ought to remember that when we're applying for major grants, they crawl over the applicant's books, and they'll be looking for some comfort that there is, there's some substance to the organisation. Once we go down the route of increasing debt substantially, we may actually not be able to get the major grants that we'd rather like to obtain.
Right, I'm going to try and hold the conversation now, because we've been starting to do this workshop here. So, Andrew, is it something other
Just very
than
quick
the workshop?
point, I think the difference between having an organisation having debt and knowing having negative cash flow in a project and managing that in year, but to aim to have debt in the year, I think is a bad route to go down. But to have negative cash flow is another thing, and understand that. A lot of companies don't have debt.
Moving on. Mike.
I do recommend we note the report, and I'm happy to move.
Second it.
All those in favour? Thank you. So we're now going to move on to item 10, which we've been waiting for months. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you. I've got a few slides, so I'll just get those up. So members, yes, I am delighted to be able to present to you for adoption our new National Park Management Plan for 2025 to 2030, our statutory 5-year management plan to deliver the National Park purposes, and in so doing as a National Park Authority, how we seek to foster the social and economic well-being of local communities. The plan sets out our opportunities and challenges for the National Park, our long-term vision and objectives, and some very bold targets and for partnership action over the next few years. As you're aware, we've been through quite a substantial process in preparing this plan, starting way back when we developed our State of the Park evidence base, and there's been a lot of ongoing engagement with partners, stakeholders, members, staff, and consultation as well. Just to say, in terms of the recent consultation that we did earlier on in the year, this was on the draft plan. It was well publicised. We didn't get as many responses as we would have hoped,
But I think in the light of that and the responses of those people who did respond, you can see actually there's general support for the plan, and I think if there had been issues or concerns that we would have expected those to have been flagged up at this stage. So I'm kind of comfortable that all the engagement that we've done previously, the public opinion survey where we had nearly 1,000 people responding, and all the meetings we've had with our partners and partnership groups really has sort of done that job for us really. All of the documents relating to the consultation and engagement and also other elements of the plan development, so the strategic environmental assessment and habitat regulations assessments are on the website and they're available for people to review. So we looked carefully at all the responses that we did get, including quite a lot of detailed comments which were very helpful, and we have amended the plan as a result of that. So for example, just providing a bit more context to some of the objectives and targets, providing a glossary, to explain some of our key terms. There were other things that came up in the consultation in terms of trying to show links and overlaps between the plan that we will look to do when we produce the final plan online, because it will be easier to do in that. I do also just need to flag to you, I put it in the covering report that just as we were finalising the report to come to you, the government issued its guidance on management plans. So I did do a quick review of that. This was something that we were sort of aware has been coming for a little while. So there wasn't really anything in that was a surprise, but I did flag in the report a couple of things just so you're aware really. One is the what we call it. So it is a National Park Management Plan. It always has been. We call it a partnership plan to reflect the fact that it needs to be delivered with partners, and we work closely with partners. So we've just tweaked the title really just to be clear on that. And also there was a point about just clarifying how the plan relates to the setting of the national park, which I've added some information on, particularly in relation to the role of relevant authorities. So these are those organisations who have a duty to seek to further national park purposes, and it's something obviously that we do anyway through our planning policies and local plans. So just for your information really, those are a couple of changes that were made at the last minute in the light of that guidance. So really just to sort of give you a quick overview of the highlights of the plan. So we have our new vision. This is something you're very familiar with. We've discussed this a lot with as members. So I think it's a really nice, succinct, clear vision of what we like to achieve for the national park, and covers the key work that we want to do around climate change and nature, our cultural heritage, and then connecting people with the national park, somewhere which continues to be home to thriving communities and a low carbon local economy. The aims, we have sort of 6 key aims, which are in no particular order, but we have highlighted the sort of particular priority that government has put around nature and climate. But these are all key aims for us as an authority and for the management plan. And then we have in the middle where those aims come together in terms of sort of the place, so moorland, farmland, woodland, wetlands, rivers and streams and coast, and those are sort of more detailed targets and objectives within the overall aims. There are a lot of targets in the plan, and we do acknowledge that, but I think it really reflects the spread and range of work that we do within Exmoor, just not just us as an authority, but as partners as well. However, I've not covered all of those in this presentation because it would be too long, but I have just flagged up the 10 national targets that all protected landscapes have been given. They're in the report as well. So that's around creating and restoring wildlife habitat and favourable management of that good habitat. There are a couple around sites of special scientific interest, so bringing those into favourable condition, which is, it is a challenge for us on Exmoor. Not enough of the good sites are in favourable condition. We have to look at that and to make sure that there are actions on track to achieve that. There's more specific targets around climate, so becoming a net zero national park and leading the response to climate change, both in terms of mitigation and adaptation. And within that, there's a lot that we can do in terms of sort of the land and the land management, so restoring deep peat and also increasing tree and woodland cover. Similarly, nature-friendly farming, which is one of the key opportunities for land management more generally. And then so those are quite sort of nature and climate focused. I say these targets don't kind of cover really the full range of the management plan, but they're the ones that nationally have been identified. So we do have one also around heritage, so reducing heritage at risk, and then one around the second purpose, so improving accessibility and engagement for all. So those are obviously a priority and something that we need to give particular focus to in terms of how we can contribute to the delivery of those targets nationally, but that's not to take away at all from the range of other targets we have in the plan, which are equally important. In terms of the plan adoption, so this was a while ago now that we launched our last one. We are subject to members approving it today. We will be looking at having some kind of launch event in the autumn. Because we now have the enhanced duty for relevant authorities to seek to further national park purposes, we are going to sort of ask them to go through some kind of process to endorse or support the management plan, because the guidance is that working with us on the management plan and its delivery is part of the way that they can fulfil that duty. So it will be up to them how they do that, but we'll be going out to them following today to ask them to send some kind of level of support or endorsement. As I mentioned, the plan mainly is going to be an online version. We will make sure that it's sort of accessible in doing that, but it does give us an opportunity to link to other information, to keep it live really in terms of some of the delivery and the action that's going on, and also to put in a sort of mapping and spatial representation of the plan, which is something else that we need to do. But we will produce a hard copy as a summary, so that particularly for staff and members, there's an easy reference version, and if people need it in other formats, obviously we will do our best to provide that as well. So yeah, I mentioned the launch event, and we're also talking with the partnership groups about potentially doing some other sort of more focused soft launches on particular aspects of the plan with various stakeholder groups. So the next challenge really is to start thinking about delivery of the plan. So producing a plan is one thing, delivering it is another. We've already done a lot of work talking to key partners on how they can contribute to delivery of the actions and targets in the plan, and we will be sort of going out to all, or are already going out to all of the partnership groups now to ask them to help in that process. The aim is to get delivery plans for each of the aims completed by the end of the year, and we will do an annual report on progress against its delivery at the National Park Forum, which again is going to be an annual event now. Have also produced a monitoring framework, so with a lot of targets comes a lot of monitoring, so we have that set up in terms of the indicators and the data that we will use for the targets. Some of them are smart targets, and we can sort of numerically monitor them. Some are more broader targets, which we'll do through actions and the achievement of the delivery plans. So that was it. Members, over to you, and I hope that you're as excited as me in terms of getting to this stage and getting this next management plan up and running. Thank you.
I think we're all relieved. I think that's the reaction, but thank you. There's an awful lot of work's gone into this, and we've obviously all had sight of it, but very well done. Members, over to you. Mandy.
Thank you. almost all of the plan is dependent on working with partners, and I'm sort of surprised in some way that this isn't a joint plan where all the partners sort of buy into and have their name. I know you're looking for endorsement, but I think moving forward we can't do what we would like to do without those partners working. And I think there's some challenging pieces of work here, certainly around the heat and the nature-friendly farming, you know, how you encourage others to do that. But there's a huge amount of aspiration here, which is welcome. It's a shame for me it's not more than 5 years, because it's an awful lot of work for a 5-year plan. It's a shame it can't be for 7 or 10 years with refreshes, because I think the amount of work that goes into it is huge, and you also get well into it, and then you're starting to think about the next one. So I'd love to see them be able to do for a slightly longer period. So it talks in the plan about some of these targets would be apportioned, but it doesn't say how that will actually happen. And then I went searching for where these targets will be reported, and I'm having a struggle because we have a lot of reports with a lot of targets in, all going to different places, and in my head I was sat thinking, like, where does that report to and where's that picked up, and I didn't manage to get everything clear about what's reported and where. So I then went down a rabbit hole and looked at the monitoring framework that we have to see whether some of it was going to be reported there. But then I thought, well, are we going to amend our monitoring framework to reflect what's in this plan? So for me it's around how we again get that assurance, where we go to see things reported, and moreover, if you like, as a whole authority, what's reported where and when, because I couldn't grab that anywhere when I looked around to try and find that information. So for me that's all the plans, where they go, so we can just make sure we don't have anything that's sort of dropping through the net. I'm sure it doesn't, but it's just having that, again, that assurance, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you for that. So yes, it is a joint plan and it is a partnership plan, and we will get the partners endorsing and supporting it, and logos on it to sort of demonstrate that support, and we work very closely with the partnership groups in doing that. We haven't gone down the route as other national parks have, where in effect they delegate, as an authority, they delegate the production of the plan to a partnership board. That is an option open to us in future if we wish to go down that route, and that's another way of, I guess, more formally getting that endorsement to the plan, but it's not something that we've done to date. Agree with you in terms of the challenges, in terms of delivering a lot of the targets. Many of them, the national targets at least, are ones that have come nationally from the Environment Improvement Plan. So they're sort of, I guess, their governance challenge to us in terms of what can we do as protected landscapes to help deliver those. The 3 that have been apportioned and the targets that are in the plan are what we think, they are the apportioned targets, so they're what we think as a national park we can deliver to the overall target. So those are on the woodland and tree cover, the peatland restoration, and the creation of habitat and restoration of habitat. So we've done that based on our nature recovery vision, basically, because that work had already been done. In terms of the length of the plan, yes, 5 years doesn't seem to be very long, does it? When it comes around, we have to do it. It's statutory for us to do it within 5 years. But again, the scale of that review is something that we can equally decide on. We have said in the plan that the vision and some of the targets are longer term, so it may be that next time round it is a much lighter touch, update, and certainly other national parks do that as well in terms of not having to change the whole plan. And in terms of how and where it will be reported, yes, you're absolutely right. The monitoring framework that's on the website at the moment is not for this plan. It's been drafted, but that's something we need to discuss with the partnership groups. So there will be the good thing about having it online now is that there will be a section of the website that will be all about delivery and monitoring and reporting, so we can put that information up there. And then my intention is that when we have our annual National Park Forum, as a partnership, we will be reporting back to members and to as partners to how the delivery is progressing. I think there will be probably a lot of detail in that, so we might just be formally talking about some of the headlines, but there will be reports against all of the target deliveries made available on the website to back that up. So that's something that we can make sure that it's signposted and flagged up to members, and you'll see it, as I say, when it comes to the annual forum.
Thank you.
Covered on it. Thank you.
Bill?
Thank you, Chairman. I think Claire's got an idea what I'm going to say. I think as a local representative of people on the park, the duty of the National Park is very important and should be highlighted more. In the officer's report under 1.3, it states as is, and it's not so clear, it's not at all clear on page 5 of the plan, where it's hidden in the sort of third paragraph, and I didn't even notice it, so Claire knows it as it. I'd like to have something that mentions duty with purposes, because I think it's really important that it's a partnership plan and it's a management plan, but if everybody's going to feel that they're involved, we need to be recognising our duty to the people that live and work on the moor. And I don't think it's that clear on page 5. It's there, but I'd just like to see it. And I did actually find something on the South Downs National Park website, which has got more like that, which is put it on an equal footing. So that's, and the only other comment I would make is that I think I don't know how you do this, but it's important that people understand that Exmoor National Park is not Exmoor. It's a description of an area around Exmoor, including the Brenda Hills and Haddon Hills and further. So I think somewhere here it should say where you refer to Exmoor, refer to the National Park, because I think a lot of people think of Exmoor as being the Forest of Exmoor. I always saw that as being Exmoor. So there are lots of different areas, but I mean, just calling it Exmoor, I think it needs to be somewhere here that says where the word Exmoor is used, it refers to the National Park, because that's what it refers to.
Okay.
And those are my two issues. I really would like to see an alteration to how page 5 is set out, to give a lot more prominence to the duty that we have to the people that live and work on the moor, or work on Exmoor.
I've got
Thank
a few hands, so I can take a few if you'd like to fight questions. That might be helpful. Laura?
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to see this. I know a lot of work's gone into this here. Without wanting to give extra work to do, I just wanted about the interaction with some of the other plans and strategies. So I'm thinking the comms plan, because now this is finalised, there's some really nice themes that we can reinforce through our comms channels, laid out really well in this plan. So I just sorry, probably an action for Dan and Carrie to just cross-reference with it to see whether actually there's a sort of a stream of comms work that's needed to sort of align with this. And also just on Bill's comments there, I just say we were given opportunities to feedback at the draft stage before it come back to the meeting. So it's I did that. I hope other members did as well.
Thanks, Laura. Fran?
Thank you. Having attended the Exmoor Society annual event and the plight of the salmon, it's quite good to see the work that's hopefully being done to keep our waterways clean. I just wondered how can we, I don't know how we monitor, do Exmoor, do we monitor them or do we have partnerships monitoring? Because we're saying we want to have more monitoring of that, but how can we implement that work? And is there, I mean, going back to comms, when we talk about veterinary usage, and if you think more for visitors, if you think of your dogs, if you've recently, used whatever it is to stop the fleas on your dogs, etc., could we do something that we could kind of say, just keep your dogs out of the water for this week or whatever, but can we do that within our magazines or our website or somewhere to raise that? Because how else are we going to do this work of and all of a sudden changing our rivers in the next 5 years that we haven't perhaps been able to done in the previous 5 years? Thank you.
Robin?
Thanks, Andrea.
First of all, I'd like to move the recommendations. Anyway, and then a couple of comments actually, really. One, I think sometimes we've got to remind ourselves we can debate the minutiae of what's in this forever, really, and I think we could ultimately end up changing an awful lot. I do absolutely support and understand Bill's thinking there that we've got to remind ourselves that there are people here that live and work here, and they are quite proud of what they've got as well. Definition of Exmoor sometimes is quite interesting. We've got to remind ourselves this is the Exmoor National Park Management Plan. Exmoor's a rather interesting place. I recently saw an advert from an estate agent suggesting that selling a property in Witheridge was on the edge of the Exmoor National Park. And conversely, to the other extreme, my great uncle, whilst I was stood in the middle of the farm at Withypool many years ago, watching the rain head out over Simmonsbath and telling me that the rain always goes out over Exmoor. I thought, I was in Exmoor at the time. So it depends on your perception, I must admit. I'm going to, I think, it's that strategic direction that we're putting in place for the next 5 years for the National Park. Really pleased, actually, to see that we talk about targets and measures, not actions. I'm really pleased to see that change. Actions seem to have that horrible feeling you have to do something very specific. Where actually, in an awful lot of cases, it is not specific measures. It's ways in which we operate, that encouragement, the ways in which we link with people, and how we present ourselves. And I think the other bit that I just feel within it, and I think Bill's comment within that, support that unique value that's Exmoor. And it is unique, it is very different. You can't pick Exmoor up and put it somewhere else, and you will have the same set of measures to do. Each national park has its own specific challenges, and that this actually represents the approach we can take. So, yes, I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. I've got lots more hands, so I'm going to keep going. Stephen, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll second the recommendations. Thank you, and as ever I would like to pay tribute to the team that has put the management plan together. Interesting looking at the photograph of, was it 2015 maybe?
2018, yeah.
It seems a long time ago. Another year, another management plan. However, I did actually, and it is perfectly encompassable within the recommendations because we've got the opportunity for final amendments to the final draft plan to be incorporated. I do think the point that Mr. Geen makes is a valid one about the duty. And I don't think it's really a particular problem because if we just adjusted the title of that particular paragraph to be Exmoor National Park Statutory Purposes and Duty, I think that would answer the case, draw attention to it. I don't think you need to alter the text because we know from painful experience that actually the duty lies beneath the statutory purposes. We're not going to be able to change that, but nevertheless, noting the fact that the duty is there and is important in the title, I think is a valid comment, and I would hope that we might be able to do that.
Yeah, we can.
Can I come back?
We'll come back to that in a minute. Evelyn.
It's just kind of practicality, really. Someone raised, I think it was Mandy, about how we can tie in with other organisations to ensure that they fulfil their obligations under it. And the representatives have been working closely in the group with Claire, and we know that representatives come and go. But I recall the launch of the Dartmoor, and I'm not sure whether we did it here, but I know for sure that Dartmoor National Park did it at Brimps Farm, where all of the partners were asked to actually sign a banner. I think we did it here too, on a previous version of that plan. And I was then working for a charity, and I was asked to do my part and sign up. So you get a different draft amongst that organisation, and then suddenly it becomes a bit more real. So although it's just a small practicality, it might be a good way to tie people in at launches.
Yeah, we've definitely done that a lot. Mike?
Well, echoing really what Stephen said, I was just about to second it, to congratulate Claire and her team on the extended consultation exercise that she's committed herself to the team to. It's a really impressive piece of work. And I was quite happy on that basis to move all the recommendations, but it's already been seconded.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, is there anybody else who wants the same thing? No? Claire, you've got a list.
I've got a list, thank you. Okay, start with the duty. So yes, Bill did flag this up with me, and I did look at page 5, and I felt, well, there's a paragraph there that, you know, sets out the duty. I think the thing that I just need to, I guess, explain is that when I was writing this, we're writing this as a management plan for the national park, and the duty applies to us as an authority in relation to how we seek to further the purposes. So there is a difference. However, having, you know, listened to your comments, I feel rather than changing the title of the overall, because it is the national park statutory purposes, the duty is not in the statutory purposes. We could put a title before the paragraph on page 5 around the authority and our duty. I'd be very happy to do that, just to be clear and to flag it up if, you know, members feel that that's important to. It is in there, but if you feel it needs to be, you know, emphasised a bit more, that as an authority, as we implement those, seek to further those purposes, we, you know, we have a duty as well.
Yeah.
So, I'll make that.
Do you mean, sorry,
I'll make.
can I just ask, do you mean statutory purposes and duty?
No, so the statutory purposes are for the national park
Yeah.
to Exmoor, which are to conserve and enhance its natural beauty and promote understanding and enjoyment of it. For the authority, we have a duty that as we seek to deliver those purposes, we must foster the. So it's just distinguishing between the national park, which is the purposes, and the authority, which is trying to implement those, and in so doing, deliver the social and economic well-being. So I think it's, you know, because the plan is for partners as well. So we're not saying that the
They have their
partners
own duties,
don't have this duty. It's only us as an authority. So it might seem confusing to the partners if we say that, you know, that this applies to them as well. It only applies to us as an authority.
Yeah, absolutely. Good.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But you're going to
put duty in, emphasise duty somewhere.
So yes, we can
It is
put a
actually-
title.
So we're all talking out of microphones, but it is actually in there. It does
It is
say
in
about
there.
the duty, and indeed, when it on you go to page 6, where it says who's it's for, it clearly says in there the people who live and work here, Exmoor local communities and businesses.
Yeah.
So it clearly does say that in there.
And the other point I was going to say is that obviously in our corporate plan, which is how we as a national park will help deliver this partnership plan, you know, we're very clear about it, you know, this being our duty as well. And we have the themes in the partnership plan around a great place to live, work and do business and so on. So I think it comes out, you know, very strongly within the plan that there is that element.
Once we have voted on this, I did delegate the chief executive and myself to change it. I will absolutely deal with this, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. It is, let's be honest, it was called the partnership plan, wasn't it? So if we just remember, this is for everybody, they do not have that duty. So we must not confuse that. It's our duty as an authority.
Thank
Okay,
you.
moving
All
on.
right, so Laura's point about the comms plan, absolutely. So Dan and Caro, the team have been looking at the comms element of this, and in, you know, as we're putting the design version together, we also will, you know, use that opportunity to really give a sort of particular, word I'm trying to think of, Dan, design of it. Design for brand, thank you, brand for the partnership plan, so that we can use that within our comms. And obviously, again, you know, it's a plan for the place, not just for the authority, but, you know, so we think we want to have some distinguishable design to our own designs as an authority, but the two, I'm sure, will dovetail. On Fran's point around salmon and water quality, yeah, I mean, this is. I think it was important this time that we had that section on natural resources. You know, we haven't had that before, and we really wanted to highlight that as a key issue, because
there is a lot of work being done around both air, water quality and soils as well. Again, it's challenging, and it does rely very much on partners, working with partners on achieving that. But we have had some quite interesting debates and discussions around the issue of things like vet meds. And comms is very important to that. So again, Karen and the team are looking at, have been putting out messages on that, and I think that's certainly something that we can do as an authority, is to just put out some general messages to people when they come, just to be aware really, because I don't think public awareness is very high. It's something that has been flagged up, for example, on swim walks and so on. Some of the actual actions to deal with the issues and the use of those chemicals and vet meds are, they're national, even kind of international issues to be dealt with. But what we can do locally is around those comms. Robin, I think I've responded on the basis of your points around measures and not actions. That's the delivery plans. Clarifying its Exmoor. Just picking up that point again. So I think we'll do that through maps. There will be maps on the online and so on. So it's a helpful point to have made in terms of people have a different vision of Exmoor when they think about it. So just be clear that it is the national park we're talking about. And the launch, Evelyn. Yes, I mean we're just about to start thinking about the launch, so we can have have a discussion about that idea as well. So thank you for that thought.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody's happy? Yes. Right. All those in favour? Unanimous.
No, it's not.
No.
One abstention, Chair.
Sorry. Any against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. Okay, so now we can move on to item 11, and Alex is going to come and talk to us about the Somerset Local Nature Recovery Strategy Public Consultation Draft. I actually decided you couldn't say that without reading it. So just be clear, we're being asked to approve something to go out to consultation. It is not the place to start discussing what's in it. Alex, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've said all I was going to introduce there, but just a reminder, this is a draft of consultation from Somerset Council, who've been working in partnership with to develop this plan. Just as a reminder, this is a requirement under the Environment Act. Responsible authorities, who are basically the county authorities, 48 of them across England, have the duty to produce a local nature recovery strategy. So we're working with Somerset and Devon, but these are independent processes. They're not everybody working together on the same thing. So we'll deal with these separately. Somerset is the first to reach this stage, and we're working with Devon as well. So National Park Authority is a supporting authority. National Park Authorities are supporting authorities, and so we're a formal consultee, and that means that we get given. This is why we're being asked to approve this as a supporting authority. We're not actually supported to do this, but nonetheless, it's very much within our in the park purposes to do this. So we've been happily working with them. Other supporting authorities include on not so much Somerset, but on Devon, there are district authorities, and also Natural England. So just generally, the LNRS consists of it's a strategic framework for nature recovery. Which is for arresting the decline in nature that's been so well documented in all sorts of ways. And what it does is it identifies areas of importance and things of importance, and it also identifies opportunities. But it's not a it doesn't come with any sort of powers or or designations or anything like that. So within it are all of them have to be the same sort of structure, a sort of common structure that DEFRA have required, and then it consists of a descriptive element, which is the statement of biodiversity priorities, description of the area and its biodiversity, its nature, description of what opportunities there might be, and then identifying priorities. And against those priorities there are potential measures and actions. All of those will sort of come to life when you have a look at the draft that was sent out as a note. And then alongside that is a habitat map, and that is, as you can imagine, a map of those things that you just described. So there are areas of importance to nature biodiversity are basically defined as nationally designated sites and local nature reserves. There's a couple of other things in there, but that's mainly what it is. And then there are, this is really kind of the key to it, the areas which could become important. So it's identifying, alongside, the important, there's already designated sites, what areas could also do more, and how that would, work together in a strategic way. So that's really the challenge that's been set. And alongside that is also areas where there might be additional environmental benefits to things like clean water. So sort of, the win-win. So there's no actual mechanism for delivering this outside of biodiversity net gain. It is linked to BNG, because there's an uplift in BNG, 15%, if your BNG project is linked to that, to an area identified in the LRS. But other than that, there are also local planning authorities are required to take account of it. So there's no other statutory mechanism at the moment. There is the hope that the other mechanisms will arise once these are in place. There's no actual requirement to take any of the recommendations or steer the strategy forward, but it's really just about identifying opportunities. There's also no protection, so there's no designation attached to it. And development of the plan involves public consultation, which is what we're asking you to go out to do. This is a plan, between a 6 and 8 week period. Some set quite define that period, probably up to 8 weeks, starting very soon in July. And then some set expect to publish this in the autumn, probably around November, after a bit of a wash-up period after the consultation phase. So that's all on the sort of generally on LRSs, and on particular Somerset LRS, the draft. So this is undertaken very much in partnership by Somerset Council, as part of the local nature partnership that exists, quite a strong partnership that exists. Lots of parties like us, but also environmental NGOs and the like, being consulted on their views on various aspects. Lots of workshops. This is the outcome that Somerset have pulled together. They've identified of significance to Somerset 8 main habitat types, and most of those are applicable to Exmoor. They are coastal areas, farmland, which is a variety of habitats, fresh water, which predominantly means rivers, but also includes lakes as well. Grassland, which is part of farmland, but it's considered significant enough on its own to have its own focus. Species-rich grassland, we've lost so much of it, so that's a real focus. Lowland wetlands, not really got much of that on Exmoor. Moorland and heath is probably our main component. Also covers urban, woodland and hedgerows, which is also quite a strong point. Exmoor has a good profile in the strategy. There's a spotlight on Exmoor, highlighting significant habitats, moorland, woodland and farmland, and also citing the dark sky reserve as being important, which is particularly for nocturnal species, and identifying issues such as loss of species-rich grassland, which has happened across the country, and the condition of the moors and the mires, which is something we've been working on for a long time. Target species are, I think, are appropriate. There are fritillaries cited and important birds on it that Exmoor is particularly important for, such as cuckoo and windchat. There are also some case studies of some important work and areas on Exmoor, such as the Sowing Seeds Project, the ENIS, a non-native species programme that we've been running. It's been cited as good practice, and a couple of areas such as Horner Farm and Honeycutt Estate, which Horner Farm is within. So what we don't have to share at the moment is the actual mapping, which we're working with Somerset Council to refine, but we're quite happy with the mapping. It obviously identifies the sites of national importance, our triple SIs, but also we're looking at opportunities to sort of where expanding woodland would be of most benefit, shall we say. That's the sort of thing we wanted to see in it, and they are reflecting that. Same with grassland areas where that's of most benefit. So we do feel it's in a good place. So that's really about it, Chair. There's two asks in there. One is, to approve, sort of for consultation, and then if it's something that you would prefer, we would, there's also a suggestion that perhaps if you're happy for us to liaise with Somerset Council to see it through to the end, then we won't bring it back to you for subsequent approval, but that's obviously entirely with you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Mike, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. One of the principles in paragraph 2.4 is the joining up, and obviously nature doesn't really have regard to administrative boundaries, and you mentioned in paragraph 1.1 about liaison with Devon County Council. What about the timing of these strategies? Are you convinced that they will be aligning in terms of the content matter and in terms of their timescales? So that's the first point. So that's that wider strategic alignment. But also working with other parties. For example, we know the good work undertaken by the National Trust at Honeycutt and Arlington. So is that going to be picked up as well as part of this strategy? Or similar initiatives by private landowners?
Well, to answer the second part first, yes, it is, and it's sort of cited in there as a case study, in Somerset one, as in Honeycutt, as an example. But the National Trust would have been involved as part of the local nature partnership in helping to define what the areas that are important or the areas that could be important. So they'll be involved in the strategy process as well. On sort of cross-boundary working, that's the thing we picked up straight away, that we want to make sure that these are compatible across the boundary. So we just had very similar conversations. It's just been a different process. Devon have approached it a different way, and they're both valued the way they've worked, but we just had a similar sort of, we've looked at it ourselves and what we think is important, and then we've gone back and given the same feedback, and we've had the same sort of level of liaison. So we are happy that they're compatible, and that's very much what they would like as well. I think Somerset and Devon appreciate we've got quite an important role in helping them mesh together with that. So we're happy with that. The timescales are very similar, so we'll probably hear from Devon quite soon.
I'm sure you will.
Yes. Sorry, just in terms of that, you really set this is the initiative, and we would hope that Devon County and other interests would align with what's already been set out here. So you've really set the initiative for the County Council to follow. Devon County?
We saw that as part of our role as, you know, as a consultancy to say what we think is important on Exmoor, but also it's important to get other, you know, outside views as well. There's other perspectives that we're not necessarily quite so keen into. So it works really well having that, you know, having that approach from both sides.
Right, let's bring this back. We've been asked here to approve a draft strategy for consultation. I've already got Laura. Laura.
Yeah, mine does relate to that. So I don't know if I'm missing anything, but I don't see a single mention of Exmoor National Park Authority in the entire strategy there, which seems a bit amiss. There's a whole page on national parks, page 38, that follows a quite comprehensive page on national landscapes, in which we are not mentioned, and it kind of dances around the purposes a bit, but it doesn't spell it out. I think it was really important that that's spelled out as part of this LNRS. It mentions other organisations by name, the Wildlife Trust, WWT, the National Landscapes, National Nature Reserve, but hopefully I've missed it, maybe, but I can't see it in there. Couple of obvious places, sorry. 38 and 158 at the end. Have I missed it? You're going to tell me it's in there.
Page 38, 39 is Spotlight on Exmoor National Park.
It's not authority though.
Authority?
We're National Park Authority, that's...
Yeah.
I know the park is in there, but there's no explicit mention for us and our duties and that kind of thing, which I think is quite important. Because, you know, we are responsible for the area, even if it's just a cursory addition on that page. And then page 34, there's a couple of figures missing. It's XX%, so they will need updating before it goes out for consultation as well.
Stephen.
I'd just be interested to hear what the comment is on the absence of the word authority from page 36, where we do Exmoor National Park, you know, gets a good old splash. Was it just one of those things where we just assumed that because it's talking about the national park, it encompasses the authority bit of this as well? And again, picking up the fact that there are some very good case studies from Exmoor mentioned here. So in terms of the overall content of the strategy, I thought Exmoor was figuring quite rightly. Yeah. But anyway, subject to the comments, I was going to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Have you taken on a point about the word authority?
I have, yes. I think encouraging to put that in.
Brilliant, thank you. Fran.
Thank you. On chapter 1.3, there's a map of Somerset, Dorset, and Devon too. I was just a bit confused as to why they put Exmoor and Devon in white, and then the main towns, I can understand the main towns in Somerset, and then they put Dorset in the same kind of text as the main towns in Somerset. So,
Page 13, 12, 13.
So, they've chosen, Bridgewater seems to be large. I mean, have they done this, I mean, I guess this is Somerset as standard. Minehead looks small in their text. Bridgewater looks large. And I mean, are they doing it by towns? But then the counties, Devon's in white text, and yet Dorset is got the blue around it, making it more prominent. And actually, for Exmoor, we're more closer to Devon, aren't we? So I just wondered if that needs...
To be honest, Fran, if you look at it, they've even put West of England Combined Authority,
Yeah.
which is completely meaningless to the population.
Yeah.
What does that mean? I've struggled to tell anybody, to be honest, in the
I
answer.
think you might need to go and talk to Mr. Rhodes.
I think you probably need to go back to your cabinet member and say, this sort of is a bit messy. Now you've pointed it out, it is very messy.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to Graham then, am I?
But it is, yeah, particularly the West of England Combined Authority, that is so meaningless to the public.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's meaningless to...
I'm not going to say that because I felt that somebody might ask me a question and I feel I ought to know the answer, but I don't. But yeah, I think that's definitely something you need to take back. We give you that job to do.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that's a good point. Robin, you were next.
Yeah, I'll second
Oh, well done.
recommendation. A couple of comments as well. I think just got to remember this is to approve the draft for wider public consultation. This is when I would hope a lot of the points that are in there will come up. Huge amount. What we have to just bear in mind is actually from an Exmoor National Park Authority point of view, we are quite well ahead of this. We approved our nature recovery vision some years ago, and it's rather concerning in some ways. It's taken this long for our authority neighbours to actually get in on the act properly. It does, however, highlight to me some of the concerns around the rather incredible situation of having a county boundary stuck through the middle and two local nature recovery strategies applicable to Exmoor, depending on which side of that line you happen to be. I'm going to have a farming business that's going to be both in the Somerset one on one side and the Devon one on the other. And I've been quite heavily involved with the Southern Devon Local Nature Partnership and the LNRS workshop. In fact, we actually had one last night, which was rather interesting. And I can suggest as it progresses further, it will get even more complex as to what's in here. We were trialling interactive mapping last night, and I can tell you, when you try and put interactive maps together to put some of what we're going to be consulted on here, the amount of layers that suddenly arrive on them gets so deep and so complex, it is near impossible to find your way around it. I think that work is what's going to have to go beyond the consultation as to what's in there and how it interacts with everyone else, the neighbours, what's going on, will be the bit to do there. So, hence, just to remind people, it's for consultation. I do think, however, we have to delegate authority to our Chief Executive to do that. But it would be quite good, Alex, at some point, that when the consultation becomes live, I think that we have an opportunity to debate the live consultation within the National Park context here, definitively, so that we could ensure, from a member's point of view, it'd be quite nice to put in some of that as well. Thank you.
And our monitoring officer now wants to speak to us, which is always very... Well, thank you. What we done what?
I was just going to raise the issue if any of the Somerset members had had input with this through Somerset Council and warned about predetermination, but I think the discussion with Councillor Smith has taken that.
I'm very grateful to Exmoor National Park for having drawn my authority's activity to my attention.
I've got another question. So it comes from that West of England Combined Authority. Don't even try to describe what that is to me. I feel I should know. But who is it really? Because we've got Dorset. So is that North Somerset that should be then? So that should be North Somerset written there.
No,
Because they're not doing an NRS.
it includes Bristol as well. So,
They're doing one altogether, aren't they?
yeah, they've actually produced theirs. They're one of the
North
few.
Somerset didn't join the West End.
No, they didn't.
But Bath, North East Somerset, South Gloucestershire and Bristol.
Yeah.
What about Cornwall? No, they don't join them. They're only
So North Somerset might be part of it.
yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah. But Bath and North East Somerset is not.
No.
Which has a bit of Somerset.
Yeah.
It's a confusing name, but it is that name.
Yeah, but Dora and I are on the same page here about this. Is what happens around North Somerset.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we'll leave you to sort that out. It's not our problem. Okay, we've had a proposal and a seconder. All those in favour? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Right, item 12, Ben's here to talk about developing a youth voice board, which we've got very excited about in the past, so over to you.
And Sophie, more importantly.
Oh, and Sophie.
Okay. I hope you all remember. Oh, I need to do things. There we go. Yeah, I hope you guys remember we came in and did a presentation before about our youth board. I don't think we need to take you through that. I think the paper is quite explanatory. One of the main things that we took away from that meeting is that we wanted to consult with Exmoor Youth Young Voices and look at whether there was conflict of interest. And Ben and I were able to meet with a couple of their members, and they were really overwhelmingly supportive of what we're doing. They saw it as something quite different to what they're doing, and actually both could feed in towards each other in really positive ways. And actually we both all came away from that thinking, actually wouldn't it be really great if we had this huge amount of youth support around the park, looking at different people, different diverse audiences and things like that. So really overwhelmingly supportive of that. So that's why we wanted to wait a little bit longer to put the paper in, but we'd like to push forward and set our youth board up.
Thank you very much. Any questions, members? Anybody like to propose it? Thank you, Robin. No? Someone's going to second, Ethan's going to second. Any questions?
Can I just say thank you for our previous briefing? I think it was really helpful, and it's nice to have that sort of run in. And also thank you to you for picking up what was said and actually actioning and running with it. I think that's really helpful and positive. I think it's a really positive paper, a really positive thing, and I'm sure of it.
Thank you. Robin?
I think you weren't here earlier on when we were discussing stuff earlier on around staff and whatever. This is going to add to your workload.
Yes.
From my point of view, thank you very much for finding even more time in your incredibly busy schedule to try and fit this in. I think it's incredibly important, and I'll be really supportive, so thank you very much.
And then Bill?
Yes, I was wondering about, will they have a budget? You know, they'll need some money, won't they, to advertise and so on. So I don't know where that money will come from, but certainly need to making sure they've got enough funds to do what they need to do.
Yes, I think you're right. I think we're hoping that we can pretty much get through the initial stage with existing budgets. It's going to be a bit of a juggling act, but we have also, where we're looking at external funding bids, there are a couple that have a youth voice element, so we're trying to feed in some additional capacity. So it's one of those things, should we be successful with those, we'll be able to either accelerate the process or hopefully achieve a little bit more. So yes, you're right. It's always going to be a challenge with existing budgets, but we think, having talked it through, that we can still progress as per the timetable.
And it's very helpful because our Young Ranger programme has moved from us core funding that to the Pioneers programme for quite a long period of time. So there is the kind of capacity where we were paying for Young Rangers previously. That's moved into being fully paid by the Pioneers project. So now we've kind of got that additional piece of capacity there, so that will help in the meantime.
Stephen?
I think I'd echo the comment about the earlier briefing was actually extremely helpful and important, and I'm very glad we've had the conversation with the young voices, and thank you very much for that. I think, though, part of the learning that we've had over the last 10, 15, 20 years is that for this sort of youth engagement to be really successful, it has to be managed in an ongoing way by the authority. And so I think we've just got to accept and understand that this is something that we are going to have to continue to have oversight of and provide a support mechanism for. It's not something that we're really going to be able to say, please go away and run your own affairs now, because progressively that will become less apposite to the outcome that we really need it to provide. The Exmoor Young Voices has evolved into a very valuable organisation which achieves a huge amount for younger people across Exmoor, but it doesn't necessarily fulfil all of the aims that the park set out for it originally, and I think they'd be the first to understand that, and that's probably why they've been very welcoming of this, because it complements now what they do. But if we want to carry on having this do this, we're going to have to carry on supporting it. We've just got to recognise that.
And that will become all the other things that we have to do as well.
Absolutely. But I'm very happy to support the recommendations and move it or second it or third.
No, that's already done. I can't even remember myself now. Right. So, any other questions? No, I have no hands. All those in favour? That is definitely unanimous. Thank you. And then finally, nearly finally, we get to item, oh dear, I've fallen all over this, 13. I've changed it to 48. I don't know why I did that. And that is about the member allowance scheme. Ben.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, this is our final of today's suite of performance reports to bring to you. So it's a statutory requirement of the local authority members' allowances regulations 2003 that we do this, which is why it's brought before you every year. It just states how much has been paid in allowances and reimbursements to members, indicates some of the meetings they've attended. So just headline figure of just over 91,000 allowances. That's an inflationary increase from the previous year, where we applied in year 2.5% cost of living allowance in line with the National Joint Council rates. The appendix provides the basic and special responsibility allowances paid, mileage and subsistence claims, reimbursements, and number of meetings attended. And just to say, this report supports the transparency and accountability in public spending that we are required to do. And that's all I really have to say on that.
Thank you so much. Members, are there any questions? Sure.
Just one tiny point. It's got that I live in Bristol, but I live in Bournemouth, which, if anyone's looking at the mileage, they might think, hang on a minute.
Apologies.
No worries.
I'm sorry.
John.
I live in Linton rather than Paraffin. I moved a couple of years ago.
Apologies,
it's only about 2-3 miles.
Just checking I live in the right place now.
We raised it, John.
Anything else from anybody? Just to make this very clear, because we've changed how we do business. This actually doesn't reflect all the meetings we've been to, which Caroline, I feel really guilty because I was supposed to write down all the things I've been to where I haven't claimed any mileage for, but hey ho. My fault.
Apologies to all members. It's really difficult to capture that.
It's not correct, no.
There might be some outstanding mileage to catch, but we do appreciate the number of meetings that you do all attend.
Yes, so this isn't correct. There's a lot more meetings where people don't have claim mileage for. Mandy.
Just as an aside, we talked a lot earlier about mileage and, being more green. I'm just wondering if you're not claiming though that mileage is still picked up as being done by us. That's my sort of question.
Yeah, and that's a really 5-point Claire still here. So, I mean, that is a 5 point because quite often, I'd like to use public transport, some people might know, and so you just don't bother, do you? Because it's £3 to catch the bus. But, so yeah, I think there's something else, isn't there, that I don't know how we pick it all up, to be honest, because it's so complicated. I don't claim for every journey I do at BBC either, so that again, you just have, it gets lost, doesn't it?
Well, we journey.
I think.
Yeah.
I was just, yes, I mean, ideally we collect everything, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
I think, going back to, I think it might have been Andy who said, that it comes to a point where you've got to think, is it worth, collecting that information? And whilst I think it's obviously helpful to know the additional mileage that members might be doing for other meetings, I suspect it's probably quite a small element of our overall carbon footprint. And again, it's not something that we can directly influence because it depends on the members' vehicles. So my kind of initial response is perhaps it's not something worth worrying too much about in relation to the effort required from you and from us to collect that data. And what can we do with that data other than report it? There's not a lot we can do to actually affect change there. So whilst in an ideal world, yes, it would be good to acknowledge all of that. We could maybe just put in a report to say this doesn't necessarily cover all of the mileage that members do, and perhaps that would be sufficient. But thank you for raising it, because it's always worth just going around that.
Very good point. Okay, can I have a proposer, please? We'll just see a contract first. Mandy, thank you. And a seconder, Mike, thank you. All those in favour? Unanimous, I think. Yeah. So then finally, we're getting to starters and leaders. This is welcome to them, especially by Carol, but equally with that, let everybody at starters and sad to see Robin and Charity go. Members' reports, item 15. Oh, sorry. Item 15, members' reports have been advised of any. Oh, Laura?
Sorry, last minute one. It was a meeting last week, so with Visit Exmoor. So just a quick update, they had their AGM last week. The previous year they got quite significant UK SPS funding, which they've invested into raising their sort of marketing efforts online and their campaigns. Membership is still relatively, there's not much growth in membership, so there are challenges going forward there. We've reduced our contribution significantly over the last decade. We're now down to a few thousand contributing to them. But last year, because of the extra funding they had, they actually funded £2,000 back to our Nature Festival, which was really well received. There's a new local visitor economy partnership. So there was one set up for Devon. These are organisations running through Visit Britain to bring together larger areas to encourage the visitor economy. They don't come with funding. The Devon one was set up a few months back, and we've just fairly recently heard that there's a Somerset and Exmoor one set up. So we kind of, like the challenge you mentioned, we straddle both of those. I understand Somerset Council put money into that Somerset and Exmoor LVET. It's a sort of moving, it's a sort of start-up, so we don't know the details of what that's going to look like or what the benefit's going to be, but we are part of that. So watching brief, and I'll let you know if there's any more updates or action on that. But one thing on that LVET, they are currently recruiting for chair. So if anyone has not got enough on their plate, 1 to 2 days a week, voluntary chair post for that local Somerset and Exmoor local visitor economy partnership. It closes tomorrow at 5. So if you are interested, get in quick and share with anyone you know who might be good for that post. So yeah, thanks very much.
Anybody else do anything? Stephen, did you have something? You're going to volunteer to be the chair?
No, I wanted to go back on the previous item.
Oh, sorry. Personnel.
Yes.
Yes.
Because today is such a sad day that we're losing Carol.
Yeah.
And it's not sad for her. You know, moment devoutly to be wished. But can I just say, and I'm sure we're going to say anyway, Madam Chairman, but you know, I've got it in there first, that we've benefited so much from having Carol's support, not only in this last bout, but in the bout before. And of course we you know, do wish her well and look forward to her returning. But we benefited hugely from Carol and her support, and I do hope as members we could acknowledge that today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think I did say at the beginning, thank you to Karen for coming back when we needed her most. That's very much appreciated. How we wish you well. Thank you very much, Madam. Okay, on that note, we're going to close the meeting. Please don't